House niggers who are enjoying crumbs from the table of the master have no duty telling the freedom fighters on how they are supposed to fight for their freedom. It is a right of the Kenyan people to demand for good governance. In fact, those house niggers need to tell the police not to go to the demonstrations carrying guns. That is what we should be discussing. Not that there will be death and destruction, no. And if you look at the provisions of Article 24, it cannot pass that test of a limitation. Its provisions are unreasonable. And the measures proposed are not justifiable in an open and democratic society. That bill belongs to the dustbin, just like bursaries. If they want to have a meeting with their representatives in State House, why should there be a problem with it? It's their right.
Okay.
You know, we should not try to subconsciously try to create an artificial barrier that sends a message to the people that there are certain areas you cannot go to.
Yes.
You cannot enter. Why?
Welcome to another episode of the Candy Talk here on Herman Manyora's YouTube channel. My name is Evan Sokinyi, and I'm joined here by Wakili Willie Sotino. Wakili, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Yes.
A lot is still happening in the country, and of course we are anticipating the events of Saba Saba, that's the 7th of July. I wonder whether they'll also be as dire as what we've witnessed in the past. But then, of course, it seems like the government is still hell-bent on ensuring that the demonstrations and protests in this country are dealt with in a manner that they seem fit to them. And of course, the Nairobi women rep has presented a bill in Parliament to ensure that the protests can be regulated, including ring-fencing certain areas, including such as State House, and of course, Parliament and the judiciary buildings as well. They say that within 100 meters, these should be no-go zones for protesters. What do you make of this? Are they actually legal, trying to control and contain these protests as they continue happening in the country?
Tarehe Saba, mwezi wa Saba, 7/7. That's a day that Kenyans have always remembered as the day when they speak and demand for accountability and good governance. It did not start this year. It has been with us. Edged in our memory and marked with the cry for Kenyans for a better country. And the attempt by legacy politicians to ring-fence themselves away from the people will not survive. You saw last week when they decided to put razor wire all over Parliament, around State House, trying to create a barrier between them and the people. It tells you the mindset. They're now trying to create an island of themselves, trying to block the access of the people to their representatives. That attempt now has mutated into a bill. Before it was a physical razor wire. Now it is coming in the form of a bill sponsored by bursaries to try to ring-fence certain installations from protests. The right to protest is a right in our Constitution, Article 37. And the protest is, and you're allowed to present your petition to public authorities when you are protesting. Parliament is a public institution. State House is a public institution. When you are protesting and you want to present your petition to those public authorities, you go to them where they are. Or do they want us to go and protest outside members of Parliament's houses or William Ruto's private residence? No. The Kenyan people have a right in their constitution to peaceably and armed to protest, demonstrate, and to picket and present petitions to public authorities. And you can only present that petition at a public institution, not in their private residences. So that attempt by bursaries fails the constitutional test. The limitation that they're trying to impose on the right to protest in Article 37, by its nature, is unconstitutional. Because in essence, what she's trying to say is that you cannot present a petition to certain public authorities, and she's identified them to be judiciary, parliament, and state house, amongst others. So where do you present your petition if you have a protest against any of them? Do you look for the office holders in their private residence? It's no longer now a public petition. That's now a private matter.
Okay.
So she cannot succeed in shielding these institutions from public scrutiny. And further, Article 10 of our Constitution sets out amongst the national values and principles of governance is accountability. What does accountability mean? Accountability means to answer to the people. So when people protest, it's demanding for accountability, asking of you to explain. And a protest, by its nature, must be disruptive to raise attention to the issue that the protester or demonstrator has a problem with. So it must disrupt the ordinary course of business. So yes, even parliamentary proceedings can be disrupted. The flow of traffic can be disrupted. Just so that the issue, subject of protest, is made known.
So when these disruptions occur, how are then the rights of those who are not picketing and protesting protected in this sense? Because essentially you assume that you are on the road protesting, and you're saying here that they ideally should elicit some sort of disruptions. What about the other person who...
That's why I said a protest by its nature must be disruptive. When a protester is on a public square in a public street, as is protesting, obviously it's going to disrupt the flow of traffic. And it is right. It doesn't mean that now we suspend the right to protest. Otherwise, the right to protest cannot be exercised. And also, tied to the right to protest is the right of the demonstrator to choose his venue, his date. It is not for the public official, target of demonstrations, to choose for him the venue to conduct a protest. It must be in the purview of the protester, the organizers of the protest, to choose the venue, the route, and the date.
Okay.
Otherwise, you will not start saying that, oh, you are interfering with other people's rights. Yes, the nature of the right to protest, it will automatically lead to interfere with other rights. So it means this right, the way it sits, it recognizes that for it to be fully enjoyed, other people's rights may be interfered with.
Which is actually wrong.
It is not wrong. The law permits it. Because you are raising an issue of public interest. And so if you interfere with the free flow of traffic, doesn't mean that now you've infringed the Constitution. Otherwise, the Constitution could not have given the people of Kenya the right to protest. Because that right to protest, for you to fulfill it, you must take it to a public square. Don't protest in your own home. You protest in a public area that is enjoyed by other people. That is the nature of the right to protest. You must understand it that way.
So talk to us about the powers that this bill also seeks to grant the Inspector General of Police to actually be able to designate areas of protest, as well as maybe the time of this particular protest.
No, as I was telling you, the right to protest, to be fully enjoyed, it is upon the organizer of the protest to choose the venue. It is not the state to choose for you a venue.
Okay.
So if the state, for example, were to tell you, okay, go and protest, but you go and protest in the desert, go to Nairobi National Park and protest. How will the protest achieve its intended objective? If the purpose of a protest is to deliver a public petition, it cannot be realized. So, and we have several international instruments which recognizes that it is the onus on the organizer of the protest to choose the venue. Is a very important component of the right to demonstrate. the choice of venue, it vests on the organizer of the protester. And this is an issue which he had litigated previously.
Okay.
When Team Courage were being stopped by the police from demonstrating to State House. And the court said no. The right to protest recognizes that it is the organizer of the demonstration to choose his venue of the protest, to choose his date of the protest. But legacy politicians will want to find ways to clamp down and to claw back on these progressive provisions of our constitution. They come up with ways that are meant to undermine the enjoyment of the right.
What of the protected areas? Definitely talk about the military barracks. You talk of of course, State House is a protected area as well. Is it the right of protesters to even go ahead and picket in such areas?
Is State House Avenue, State House Road a protected area? It is not.
But the State House itself?
No. Is State House Avenue, State House Road a protected area? It is not. So, if you are going to protest outside State House, on State House Road, on State House Avenue, or State House Crescent, those are not protected areas.
But the protesters wanted to storm State House itself.
You see, the point is, the protest is done in a public square.
Okay.
Just like you cannot hold a protest in somebody's private home. Okay? So State House Road is fair game.
Okay.
A protester should be allowed to protest on State House Road and present the petition at the gate of State House. Storming and demonstrating are two different things. In this particular instance, we are talking about the right to demonstrate on a public square. And State House Road is fair game. It's a public square. Anybody should be free to demonstrate outside there.
What about State House?
And present his petition. Okay? So it is within your right as a citizen to protest outside there.
Outside.
Because that falls within the public space. Just as I've told you, you cannot protest inside someone's private residence. It's now not a public space.
Okay. So to that extent, you're saying that State House Road is not protected and therefore they can protest along that road. What of the premises within? Because we saw the other time there was a breach in Parliament, and this time round, if at all the protesters are allowed to protest along and on the State House Road, then there is a possibility of them...
So you're assuming there will be a breach. You've already seen ahead that they will storm State House.
But they were saying they're going to State House.
You are seeing ahead they're going to storm State House. Okay, fine. But even if they did, what's the problem? Whose house is it? It's the people's house.
Okay.
And the people are the sovereign, Article 1. Even if they stormed, so what? It's their right as a people. If they want to have a meeting with their representatives in State House, why should there be a problem with it? It's their right.
Okay.
You know, we should not try to subconsciously try to create an artificial barrier that sends a message to the people that there are certain areas you cannot go to.
Yes.
You cannot enter. Why? If the sovereign wants to go somewhere, the sovereign should be able to go there. Because Article 1 of our Constitution, sovereignty vests in the people of Kenya. So if the sovereign wants to go and meet his president, what's the problem with it?
Okay.
If in the course of a demonstration, there's a need to meet with the public official targeted, why not?
Okay.
Delegations are held in State House every day here. Why have we never found a problem with it? It's only when people are rising to raise an issue and demanding accountability and good governance want to have a similar audience that you have a problem with it. No. It cuts both ways. When you are meeting your praise singers and traditional dancers, in equal measure you should be ready to meet those who are not happy with how things are going on in this country.
Okay.
Yeah. And being in State House does not necessarily mean you should not connote evil. It may be people want to have a direct conversation with the occupants and the residents. Yeah. Let's have a talk. We don't agree with what you are doing. And our voices are not being heard. They've been ignored. So they should be able to go there and meet with their representatives and they talk and they tell them, no, this and this we don't agree
so
with.
What then happens to this entire concept of a protected area?
Well, the concept of protection simply is a question of control, of access, right? But in this particular instance, it's a sovereign demand by the people. They want to have a conversation with the occupant.
Okay.
What's wrong with that?
I also saw a petition filed to actually have the Inspector General of Police answer for the police action to actually block roads. Remember on 25th of June, a number of roads were barricaded and people were not even allowed to pass through. There was traffic snarl up everywhere. In fact, it wasn't even traffic snarl up because the vehicles were not even allowed to go on the road. What do you make of that petition too? Was it actually wrong for the police to...
But previously the courts have
barricaded?
said that the police should not barricade roads. Why are they interfering in the free flow of traffic? Because you talked about respecting other people's rights.
Yes.
I've explained to you that in Article 37, for it to be enjoyed, it's permissible that there will be infraction on other people's rights to freedom of movement. What of the police creating a barrier on a road? What informs that decision to create a barrier on a road?
Maybe there was need to
Or
control. There was a need to control the number of people who would access.
So
the
you
central
are trying
business
to
district.
so you are trying to undermine the exercise of the right to protest and to peaceably demonstrate. Correct? You want to limit the numbers. So you start by, I want to interfere with somebody else's right to protest. So let me go ahead and also interfere with other people's rights to freedom of movement. I barricade roads. So who here is committing illegalities? It's the IG and his police. Because it is not for the police to try to curtail the enjoyment of fundamental rights. You may not like the message that the demonstrators are passing, but you have a duty to facilitate the communication of that message. That is your duty, not to infringe.
Okay.
It is not for you to look at the message that the demonstrator is communicating. So don't take an action that seems to impede the enjoyment of the right to demonstrate and to pass that message. And it is right in order for the IG to be called to order and to be questioned in court as to that conduct. Where do they get these powers that they think we are a police state? You can just create barriers on the road and interfere with the free flow of traffic and movement of people to achieve what objective?
Okay. What then happens to the role of the police in ensuring that there is law and order even during protests?
They're supposed to come with Band-Aid, water, first aid kits, handkerchiefs, marshals, to guide demonstrators to their destination. That is their duty. Their duty is supposed to facilitate the enjoyment of that right.
And when things cross over to the kind of situation that we've witnessed in the past.
Why will things cross over? If the police, because normally the people who first instigating violence are the police. When they deploy and carry guns, water cannons, batons, and tear gas, what are they using those ones for? They should be carrying water, Band-Aid, first aid kits, handkerchiefs, to help anybody who may be in need. But their deployment by its nature, they are deployed for war.
Is it possible that the police can actually ensure the safety of the protesters and at the same time ensure protection of property so that we do not...
They can, because in most cases what we've witnessed in this country is when the police don't interfere with the demonstrators, demonstrations turn out peacefully.
Okay.
It is only when the police turn up with their weapons of war that things turn ugly. So the blame is squarely on the police. And we've seen in recent past where the police are giving cover to goons, goons hiding behind police vehicles, being escorted into town, goons appearing live on TV, threatening, and the police don't take action on them. So it can clearly tell you that the people who are responsible here are the police, working in cohorts with the goons paid by legacy politicians to interfere with and disrupt and to destroy property. That is what they should be investigating. How comes you want to blame the demonstrators? And to date, of all those many videos that you've seen online, not a single of those goons has been arrested or even invited to write a statement, record a statement. Why? It means the legacy politicians and the police are protecting them. And their faces can be seen. Their images are visible. They are people who we know where they live in the community. Black and white.
Okay. Previously, during the other demonstrations, we also saw under the tenure of the now Deputy President, the then Cabinet Secretary in charge of Interior, Professor Kithure Kindiki, there was also an attempt to bring such kind of bills. Of course, it fell flat after the courts declared it unconstitutional. Do you see the same fate befalling this particular one?
Similar fate. That bill, as presently drafted, cannot pass the constitutional test. It is a bill that is not meant to further the provisions of the Constitution, but to hinder the enjoyment of fundamental rights.
Okay.
And if you look at the provisions of Article 24, it cannot pass that test over limitation. Its provisions are unreasonable. And the measures proposed are not justifiable in an open and democratic society. That bill belongs to the dustbin, just like bursaries.
Okay. Saba Saba is coming here, and a number of leaders as well have talked to the young people. There are those ones who are telling them that to please keep off these demonstrations because they turn bloody and deadly at the end of the day. We've lost lives recently, and it goes without saying that there is a possibility that the police will react in the manner in which they've been reacting, and we risk losing more lives. What would you tell the young people outside there as they prepare for the Saba Saba kind of, I don't know whether to call them protest or what, but then what is coming?
House niggers who are enjoying crumbs from the table of the master have no duty telling the freedom fighters on how they're supposed to fight for their freedom. It is a right of the Kenyan people to demand for good governance. In fact, those house niggers need to tell the police not to go to the demonstrations carrying guns. That is what we should be discussing. Not that there will be death and destruction. No. They should be telling the police that, can you please restrain yourself? Stop interfering with the right of the people to demonstrate. And our young people, any Kenyan, has a right to demonstrate peaceably and unarmed. And those who don't want to are also have a right to stay at home and do whatever they want to do. Don't interfere with them. Don't try to discourage those who want to fully enjoy their rights to demonstrate and to demand for better governance. If that thought was to pervade in this community, that people should not be fighting for their rights, we will still be under colonialism.
Will you be in the streets on?
Of course.
Saba Saba?
Lazima kama ibada. Lazima kama ibada.
And they're asking, what is the agenda this time round?
It is the people's voice. Sovereignty belongs to the people. And the agenda still remains Ruto must go.
Okay.
Yeah. Half term.
Not one term, you're saying half term.
Half term.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are, of course, moving towards the Saba Saba. That is the event that will be there on the Monday, the 7th of July, this particular year. We're waiting to see what happens therein, but I do hope that, at least for the first time, we will witness a situation where law and order will exist in the country. Please weigh in and tell us what you actually think, and whether you will also take part in the coming demonstrations to demand for accountability in this country. Allow me to stop for now till we have this conversation again. Have yourself a lovely day. My name is Evans Okinyi.